We did have some news break last night and then overnight. I mean, in the still of the nights. But let's go to this. Donald Trump removed from Maine primary ballot by Secretary of State. Maine barred Donald Trump from the primary ballot Thursday, becoming the second state to block the former president from running again because of his actions before and during the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. The decision by Maine Secretary of State Shenna Bellows is sure to be appealed. The Colorado Supreme Court last week, of course, as we know, found Trump could not appear on the ballot in that state under a part of the U.S. Constitution that prevents insurrectionists from holding office. The Colorado Republican Party has asked the U.S. Supreme Court to review the case, which could resolve for all states whether Trump can run again. Both states have temporarily put their decisions on hold so Trump can pursue appeals. Here are some key states where Trump's ballot eligibility has been challenged. Obviously, Michigan and Minnesota are keeping him on. That's significant. Those are two legit swing states. Colorado leans blue and will almost certainly go blue anyway. Oregon has a case pending. Maine now has Trump taken off the ballot. Maine is the closest to a swing state of those three in question now because they divide their electoral college votes by congressional district. And in both 2016 and 2020, Trump did win one of those districts. So this is the first ruling that could potentially, quite possibly, in fact, probably have electoral college consequences. The others are significant in terms of the primary process, because if Trump is off the ballot in enough primary states, that could keep him not under the plurality, but under the 50% majority, which then pushes voting to a second round at the Republican convention. And by far the biggest danger that we've been hearing of in terms of him getting thrown off of a primary ballot that could have real consequences at the convention is the state of California, which was rumored to be contemplating taking him off the ballot there. News broke in the middle of the night. I don't know how a court releases a statement at like 1 o'clock in the morning, but they did. California Secretary of State leaves Donald Trump on the presidential primary ballot. So this is a very significant development because California goes blue in the general, but it's still a very high population state, which means there are a lot of delegates to be had in the primary. So the fact that he's on here is a big step towards getting him over that 50% threshold. So this is big news for that reason. California Secretary of State declined to remove Donald Trump from the presidential primary ballot despite a call for her to do so from the state's lieutenant governor. Dr. Shirley Weber did not immediately issue comment on her decision to include Trump after her office released the list of certified candidates on Thursday night. Last week, Weber issued a tepid response to an open letter from Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis. At the time, Weber did not indicate if she would fulfill Kounalakis' request and said her decision would be guided by her office's, quote, commitment to and respect for the rule of law. Removing a candidate from the ballot under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is not something my office takes lightly and is not as simple as the requirement that a person be at least 35 years old to be president, Weber wrote. Bless you. Some top Democrats in California joined Kounalakis' call to remove Trump from the ballot. However, Governor Gavin Newsom publicly opposed the move, saying Trump should be defeated at the polls. So mixed news there for Donald Trump, off the ballot for now, at least in Maine, pending a Supreme Court appeal, which is obviously forthcoming and will likely be expedited. But then the good news, obviously, is nothing to worry about in California.
Yeah, in the end, this state-by-state thing is almost irrelevant, except in that it's going to bring this issue to the Supreme Court. I'm not a lawyer. I think it's unlikely that the courts are going to throw this back to the state. I think they have to rule on whether it is legitimate or not to throw him off the ballot. I suppose they can rule. Again, I'm not a lawyer. We should get Glenn on. We'll have friend of show Bree on to discuss this matter, maybe. Our constitutional lawyer Barack Obama. It seems that they can. I would imagine they can have the ruling that it's up to the state.
Right.
So then you would have a patchwork of states with different rulings on this. But if they rule on the matter of whether Donald Trump is disqualified under the 14th Amendment, that could just decide for all states whether he's on or off the ballot. But either way, it's going to the Supreme Court. So what these individual states do, it's only relevant if they decide each state can go its own way.
Right, which is a distinct possibility. It's really it's tough to predict how they're going to rule on this. I mean, a lot of people like Rachel Maddow obviously is worried that because Trump appointed 3 of the justices on the court, and it is a right-wing court, that they are going to just rule in Trump's favor, that these attempts are illegitimate. In that case, Donald Trump is free to pursue and obviously clinch access to the ballot in all 50 states. But if they do rule that the states are free to interpret the 14th Amendment as they wish, then that could create, as Russell said, a mixed result. Now, that's, again, I don't know. We'd have to have someone more qualified to answer that than us on to really get a good sense of like how that decision is going to go, because the Supreme Court is there to interpret the Constitution, right? Isn't that their role? That's their main role. So for them to punt it back to the states would be kind of an odd decision, since they are ruling on a constitutional matter. Each individual state is ruling on an amendment to the United States Constitution.
Right.
So if they're not there to interpret the Constitution and rule yes or no on the legitimacy of those state interpretations, what are they there for? That's not to say they won't do that. Again, we would need much more, thoroughly focused legal minds on here to give you a better sense of that. But as a layman, it seems to me like if that body exists to interpret the Constitution, that they kind of owe the country a yes or no ruling, especially under these circumstances.
Yeah, I don't think they'd be able to elide the constitutional question for a federal election. This is a federal election. I don't think they're going to be able to rule that each state essentially can make its own rules for who gets to be on the ballot for a federal election. I think by definition, they're probably going to have to rule one way or the other on whether he's qualified. But again, neither one of us are lawyers. We've got to call out to Bree. She may be on next week.
We could be wrong.
I'm joking, of course.
We could be wrong, as they say. That's the caveat.
Please clap.